Every year, literally millions of dollars are lost in pre-sale deposits because buyers can't complete on their purchases. In this video, I go over the top 5 mistakes that buyers make so that this doesn't happen to you in the future. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hasan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver, and I make these educational videos so that you can do your own research before making any sort of buying or selling decisions. So if you're wondering what a pre-sale or pre-construction property is, it's very simply anytime you purchase a property before it's fully completed. Now, the first mistake that I see, and this happens all the time, is buyers who purchase pre-sale properties with the expectation that they are going to assign or flip these properties for a profit before the building actually completes, or the development, the unit itself, actually completes construction. Now, the problem with this sort of strategy is, number one, none of us fully know what's going to happen with the real estate market in 2, 3, 4 years from now. It is possible that the value of your property that you've purchased is now worth less than what you've paid for it. So now all of a sudden your plan to make a profit on your deposit, or a profit by assigning the property, it's null and void, and you're actually in a position where you would potentially lose money and lose portions of your deposit in trying to do a flip. One of the things that is not often accounted for by buyers are the different fees and some of the restrictions surrounding assigning a property. So I already mentioned how the market may be down and you may actually have to flip or sell this property for a lower value than what you paid for it. But the other things that are involved in assigning a property are assignment fees. So developers will charge a certain percentage anytime you want to assign that contract or flip the property. Back in the day, that assignment fee, oftentimes it was waived, or it was 0.5% or 1%. I've now seen assignment fees as high as 5%. Developers were not very excited about seeing buyers capitalize by flipping the paperwork or assigning the property when really the developer is taking a lot of the risk. So when the market was piping hot here in Vancouver, developers started adjusting their assignment fees so they could take part in the action, so they could get some of those proceeds. So as a buyer yourself, when you're thinking down the road that, you know what, I'm not even going to complete on this property, I'm just going to flip it, you have to know what the assignment fee looks like as well. You have to hope that the market is up and you can basically make a profit even after paying that assignment fee. The other thing to think about in terms of restrictions when you're assigning a property is there are often marketing restrictions imposed by the developer, especially if the developer has their own units still to sell. They often restrict the way that you or your realtor is able to market the property. So they may say you can't put it on the MLS. You have to wait until all our units are sold. Until you do so, you can only market it through exclusive channels. You can kind of see how this can pose a problem, because you're not getting your property out now in front of as many eyes as if you were able to place it on the MLS. You don't get signage opportunity as well often because you don't actually have these units or the building completed. So when there are marketing restrictions, you are not actually getting this property out to as many potential buyers, and that affects the value that you're able to get in an assignment. And of course, you always have to factor in taxes. And I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to get too in depth with this, but I do know that the CRA here in Canada, the Canadian Revenue Agency, they don't take too kindly to property flippers, people that purchase pre-sale and assign the property before completion. Check with your accountant anytime that this is part of your strategy, that you want to actually flip a property before it completes and potentially avoid taxes. Again, CRA is not very fond of this, and they do keep track. Now the developers keep track, obviously, of the purchases that are made and the assignments that are made, and this information can be used by the CRA to make sure that if you're avoiding any sort of taxes by doing the flip, that you do ultimately end up paying for those taxes. The second mistake that I see buyers make all the time, and we briefly talked about how buying a pre-sale or pre-construction is when you're purchasing the property either right at its infancy stage or a few months away from completion, especially in times when you're purchasing 2, 3, 4 years out from when the expected completion date is buyers think that they don't have to worry so much about the mortgage or what their financial situation is going to look like at time of completion. Now, I totally get that we don't always know where we're going to be from a personal situation, but a financial situation 3, 4, 5 years from now. But if you're purchasing a pre-sale property, you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan that you're able to complete. To me, it's not enough of a strategy to say I'm going to flip the property before it closes. That's not a strategy. To me, a plan is, yes, I would like to do that if the market is up by a certain amount of percentage points, but if it's not, I have the means and the ability to complete on this property and either move into it myself or rent out the property. So when I'm doing pre-sale analysis with my clients, we always look at a plan A and we look at a plan B. And anyone that comes to me and says, I want to purchase a pre-sale only to flip it, I'm not sure I can complete on it, but don't worry, I'm going to flip on it. I don't sell pre-sales to those buyers because relationships are important to me and they're more important to me than making a sale. Now, the mortgage component, it is a tricky one because 99% of lenders are not going to give you a mortgage today on a property that's going to complete 3, 4, 5 years from now. There are a couple lenders here in Canada that do have a pre-sale program where you can get a firm approval well in advance, years in advance of the property actually completing. So that's one avenue available to you, and one that I suggest to clients is to speak with these there's 2 lenders in Canada that'll do it. Speak with them and see if you can get a firm approval early on, potentially even get it before you remove subjects on the property or you pass the rescission period of the property. A rescission period is the buyer's remorse period, 7 days by law here in Canada, where you can walk away from a pre-sale contract. So it is possible to get a firm mortgage approval before that period expires. There are other things that you can do to protect yourself and make sure you're in a good position at completion time. Now, sometimes what will happen when you sign a pre-sale contract is the developer will allow you to list down family members, 2 or 3 family members that you're allowed to add on to the contract, if you will, prior to the time of closing. And most of the time this is done so that you have additional support when it comes to mortgage approval and mortgage funding. So if you're given that opportunity and you're in a situation where you have family members who are interested in partnering with you on the real estate or purchasing the real estate with you, I always suggest doing that, because that's basically a security, that's a safety blanket to make sure that you're able to complete at the time of completion. Because again, we have no idea really where we're going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now. As we've learned in the last 16 months, anything can happen. The third mistake I see buyers make all the time, and again, I am a real estate agent, so I have clients that have made this mistake as well, is they don't read the disclosure statement. Now, the disclosure statement, it is going to be one of the driest documents you ever read. Having said that, it is one of the most important documents that you could ever read. And what the disclosure statement is it's created by the developer's lawyer, and it outlines basically every right and responsibility in terms of that pre-sale unit that you're purchasing. So included within that disclosure statement are going to be the bylaws, are going to be the strata plan, so what the development actually is going to look like from a plan perspective and a size of unit perspective. What happens if when they build out, if the unit is smaller than they expect it to be, or it's larger than they expect it to be. What the deposit structure looks like. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people purchase into pre-sales is they only have to put down a deposit initially and they don't have to worry about completion until the end. And sometimes that deposit is 5, 10%, 15%. Usually we see 20% on high-rise constructions, but that will all be outlined in the disclosure statement. The disclosure statement is essentially gospel. And what I mean by that is no matter what you see in a marketing brochure, no matter what you see in a show home, when you go to purchase a pre-sale property, none of that matters. No matter what the sales rep in the pre-sale center tells you, it means nothing. The only thing that matters to you when you're purchasing this property is the disclosure statement itself. So you can understand why it's critically important to read, understand it, ask questions. Your realtor should be reading it as well. Very important document. I'll give you an example about a disclosure statement nightmare story actually in Kelowna. One of the components of a disclosure statement is having an outside date. So the developer will always say, we expect that this project is going to complete on this date. But then what they do is they add in a secondary date. It's called an outside date. And it gives them a longer period of time to complete on the project. Should some delays happen, should things go wrong, the developer, again, this disclosure statement is created by their lawyer. It's designed to protect the developer. So they'll have an outside date in there saying, look, if we miss our expected completion, we still have up until this date to complete. And if we don't complete, we're going to give you back your deposit. Now, this disclosure statement that I'm referring to again here in BC, it didn't contain an outside date. There was no date to hold the developer accountable to have to complete by before they had to return the deposit. What does that mean for the buyers? They literally still have their deposit money tied up and held by the developer because the developer is not committed, does not have a commitment to finish this product by any outside date. There's no deadline for the developer. So these buyers are literally having their cash held. It's been, I want to say 3 or 4 years since a lot of these buyers put down their initial deposits. So very, very critical. Outside date is one of the most important, in my opinion, one of the most important things to look for in a disclosure statement. If you come across a disclosure statement that doesn't have one and you're unable to get the developer to commit to adding a line item for an outside date in the disclosure statement, walk away from that contract. The next mistake I see buyers make, and we see this at the time of completion, is expecting that their unit is going to look exactly like what they saw in the show home. Now, one thing to always keep in mind when you go into show homes, show suites, presentation centers, they are exactly that. All of the potential upgrades will be present in the show suite. The show suite will have a lot of different components in it that you are not getting in your quote unquote base unit that you're purchasing. Again, the disclosure statement is so critical, and that's why when you walk into a pre-sale center or a show suite, you have to understand that some of the components you see there, they may actually not come to fruition, fully come to fruition. I know there are developments here locally where the designs and the plans look like they'd have, you know, this grandiose lobby for people to enter into, and when the project was completed, didn't quite look like the marketing brochures. I can tell you another horror story actually here in East Vancouver where the marketing brochure showed that there would be pool access with a neighboring building, with essentially a building that was contained on the same property. So the marketing all showed that there was going to be this pool as part of the amenities. The disclosure statement did not mention the pool. Guess what happened at completion? All of the owners of the new building do not have access to the pool that they saw in the marketing brochures. Again, disclosure statement, critical. Read the disclosure statement. Even if you don't take a look at the brochures, make sure you read that disclosure statement. It's a big mistake I see buyers make all the time. Again, your realtor is going to read those as well, but it is your responsibility to read them and ask any questions that you may have as well, and make sure you're very clear. And that's why we are given that 7-day rescission period, and it's literally to read that disclosure statement and make sure we're comfortable with making the pre-sale purchase. And the last mistake, for this video at least, I could go on for hours on the different types of mistakes, but the last one that I'm going to cover that pre-sale buyers make is they don't purchase a unit through a reputable developer. There are a lot of developers who've been developing properties for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and then there's a lot of, I would say, newcomers to the development space, and a lot of developers have moved over from predominantly building single family homes, 1 or 2 here and there, to smaller townhome projects. And like anyone else in their careers and in their business, they are working their way up. What I have found when you're purchasing pre-sale and you have a choice in the different projects or the developments you're looking at, look for the developer that has a long track record of completing projects successfully and completing on time. Never expect any developer to meet the exact time frame they say they're going to complete by. Doesn't matter if you're the largest developer in the country or you're a smaller developer. there's always delays. I find that the delay is anywhere between 6 to 8 months from when the expected completion date is. So, don't purchase a pre-sale property because there's a hard and fast date that you need to move by. That's a risky scenario, and probably a scenario that you won't actually be able to meet. The developer won't be able to meet in terms of their completion time. But again, I find that the reputable developers, the ones that have been building the specific type of product that you're purchasing into, the ones that have been building that for a long period of time, they have a greater track record of completing the projects in time because they have greater access to the trades that allow them to complete these projects. I purchased a unit locally in Coquitlam here with one of the largest name developers, purchased it last year, and even after COVID hit, they were still able to complete close enough to the expected time frame. They were delayed slightly, but they still had access to the trades to get the job done and to get the job done well. So when given the option, dig into the history and the past of the developers. The disclosure statement, one of the first 2 pages, is actually going to highlight the developers and their experience level at building the type of project that you're purchasing into. But do your own homework outside of the disclosure statement. Your realtor should do their own homework as well to make sure they understand that developer's track record, history of projects before, and that will ensure that you're going to be happy with the product you buy when you walk into your unit once the project is completed. So now that you've watched this video, you should be much more prepared to purchase a pre-sale unit and go through the right steps to make sure you've done your due diligence and not put yourself in a position to lose your deposit money at the end of the day. Guys, if you got value out of this video, I would love it if you could hit the like button. What that does is it actually sends the video to more people who it may be able to help. Again, my name is Hasan Juma. I'm a real estate agent here in the Vancouver area. If you're looking at selling or buying real estate and you want my help, all my contact info is below in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day.